it's really late at night, really late at night, because I've been testing this laptop all day. This here is a brand new model from Lenovo, a divisive one, because this here is the ThinkPad X9 Gen 1. I guess they call it the 15. It's the Aura Edition. Aura Edition means that it is using the Lunar Lake, the Intel Lunar Lake chip. Various options that you can get there. We'll go through the builder and see what you can get, but it does come with the Lunar Lake chip. This laptop here is a totally new SKU for Lenovo, and it's something very interesting. It does have that really efficient CPU in here that allows this thing to have good performance despite not needing a ton of watts. It's an all-metal chassis. It's a ThinkPad, but it doesn't look like a normal ThinkPad. You can notice the track point is gone. So it's just, almost got some yoga type design to it. Some people have been like, it looks like a MacBook. I mean, it doesn't. It looks like a yoga, if anything, but that's fine. All-metal chassis, absurdly thin. Look at that. It has this little kind of plastic I/O port there where the fans are as well. You can see the fans on the bottom. And that allows it to maintain incredible thinness on this thing here. Despite that, it has a gigantic battery. I don't want to spoil too much. This laptop here is designed for people who need truly absurd battery life. Like I'm talking crazy good battery life. For a Windows laptop, like all day battery, and then also the next day you're using this laptop before you charge it. Doesn't run super hot. It doesn't weigh much. I mean, it is a 15-inch laptop that's metal, so it's not going to be super incredibly light, but for what it is quite light. And for people who need to have a beautiful, beautiful OLED screen that's not actually too reflective, as you can see that there, for a change, if you're going to use it in an outdoor environment or a bright environment, you're not going to have brutal reflections on that screen there. So let's jump into this review here. This is a laptop, a ThinkPad, that's really meant to kind of bridge the gap into the high-end Yoga Pro type lineup, but offer some really interesting, cool new features on it. Looking at the different spec options here on the PSRef document, you can see there are a number of different CPU options. This one here is spec'd out with the 258V, which is probably the sweet spot, I would say. If you look at these different options here, the lower ones, they're all kind of similar. Honestly, there's not a big difference between them. They're all 8 cores. These don't use hyper-threading, but they do have the 130V. Once you move up here to the 258V, you do get access to that 140V. And that is going to be a considerably better iGPU. And typically it is also paired with 32 gigabytes of RAM, larger cache as well, so it should be a little bit faster. And then moving up to the 268V, I haven't tested this one here, but generally speaking, what you're just looking at is essentially slightly higher clocks on it. So it should be very similar overall, a little bit faster. I think that the sweet spot for this would probably be the 258V overall. The chip, both of the iGPUs in here are very capable, but the 140V is an exceptionally capable iGPU for things like gaming and of course even things like video editing. 2 different RAM options, they are soldered, so you do have to pick the amount that you want. Typically when you get the 258V, it is paired with the 32 gigabytes of RAM anyways. It only does have one singular NVMe, it's 2242 unfortunately, but you'll see when we do the teardown why that is. One battery size as well. Nothing otherwise really interesting here. You do have a couple screen options. You do have a 1200p OLED, so if you're looking for even more battery life, this may be the way to go because it is still a beautiful screen. 1200p OLED, 400 nits, fairly bright, 100% DCI-P3, not quite as high refresh, so it's going to be really good for battery, but you are going to lose some pixel density. Moving up to the screen here, which I have on this laptop, 1800p is going to be much more pixel dense. It is slightly brighter as well. It's also a touch screen. And then of course you do also move into a higher refresh up to 120 hertz. And again, it's going to be 100% DCI-P3. So if you lose a little bit of battery life going on this better screen here, I say at this size of screen, the pixel density is more appealing to me. But if you absolutely want to maximize battery life on this laptop, the 1200p might be a great option for you. Okay, and here's a look at the laptop. It is a thing of beauty. It's got that darker metal, not like a dark gunmetal, but darker than the lighter silver options you can get from many brands. This thing is impossibly thin. It won't show up on camera, it never does, but this thing is so unbelievably thin. I don't even know what I could use to compare to this thing. Here's a USB flash drive. And it's about as thick as that. And this is not a thick USB flash drive. It's almost exactly that thickness, actually. I think technically it's actually thinner. then that USB flash drive. So this thing is impossibly thin, and that's with the screen. The actual chassis, you can see there, it's so thin. Crazy thin. All metal here, metal lid, metal sides, metal bottom. You'd expect as much out of something so incredibly premium. It's got this nice kind of ribbing here, I guess I'd call it, which gives it some texture in that, maybe a little bit just design. And then there's a little bit more thickness here because the actual chassis is so thin, but this allows for a little bit more fan. Otherwise, you know, you just wouldn't have room for things like I/O and fan. So they're able to keep the other parts of the chassis where the motherboard is so freaking thin, and then just give a little bit more of a raise up to have some more chassis parts there. Speaker firing down there, for example, a little bit of a foot to raise it up, and then this itself raises it up with the little guys there. So beautiful looking laptop. Inside, also very beautiful. A little bit more of looks a little bit more like some of the other laptops there. You know, this is a ThinkPad. Some people are gonna be like, it doesn't have a ThinkPad because it doesn't have the TrackPoint Nib and buttons up there. Whether that's true or not is up to you. It has definitely some yoga elements, but this thing is unbelievably premium feeling. The keyboard, you can see there's actually a cut to it. So it's not just a flat, it actually has like a cut ramp up to it. Very interesting. Trackpad is beautiful, haptic. Semi-glossy screen, kind of like some of the Samsung stuff. So it is reflective, but once it's on, you won't see it. It does cut down. There's a little bit of a blue tinge you can see there. It'll cut down the reflectivity. If this was just a pure touchscreen glossy OLED, it would be a straight mirror. You'd be able to see everything. Camera bump out there is good. Allows it to give a little more camera to it. You're not gonna have crazy I/O on this, but you do still get a full-size HDMI. Fascinating. USB-C, and that's Thunderbolt. Right side, USB-C, and that's Thunderbolt, so you get two of them, and you get a legacy port as well, which is critical. I don't know why laptops don't have a USB. I would sacrifice USB-C any day for that. So very good port selection for something that is so impossibly thin. A little bit of exhaust back there. It's not meant to be a performance beast. You know, doesn't have an HX processor, but what it does have is a Lunar Lake processor. The Lunar Lake stuff, the 258V in this case, is incredibly efficient. So even though it's not going to be high watts, it's going to be relatively low watts, it's still going to be quite capable, to be honest, for what it is. Give you good battery life in that too. So you don't actually need as much cooling in that because they don't need to ramp up, you know, crazy watts to get good performance. Very light, 1430. It's not going to be as light as some laptops, but it's metal and it's 15 inches. So it's a little bit larger than, you know, some laptops on the market in terms of area, and it's also metal. So that's a good weight for that there. Now, I think it's time to get inside. I'm very curious to see what's going on inside this thing. This thing smells incredible inside. So stupid, but so true. I think this is a review unit. I'm not the first to have it, but I wonder if the previous person was like, it smells so good. Metal, right? A little bit of plastic there for that there, but this is a metal bottom. It needs to be for being so thin and rigid. There's actually not a lot of structure because it really just sits right on top. So that's cool, nice and thin. And then it's, like I said, it is a obscenely thin laptop. Very thin with an 80 watt hour battery. Now, to do that, they could either make the battery thicker, make the whole laptop thicker, then they could shrink this down, you know, for example, like that there, and bring more motherboard down. That would be cool. But then your laptop's thicker. So there's a compromise here. Either you make the battery smaller or you make the laptop thicker if you want to change other things inside. This, for what it is, looks very good. They have managed to keep the laptop truly impossibly thin, yet it has a gigantic 80 watt hour battery. Speakers should be pretty good. They're up firing. I'm hoping they're okay. And inside of here, you still manage to get a dual fan setup. For a Lunar Lake processor, it should be quite good. They are smaller fans, as you can see there. But again, there's two of them with a dual heat pipe setup. No GPU in here, no dedicated GPU here, just the Lunar Lake chip, which honestly, it doesn't need high watts. 30 watts is enough. You do have a 2242 size, which is nice, not a 2230. Again, there's just nothing they can do. I have no complaints here. Oh, it doesn't have a 280. That's not the point of this laptop. This is not a workstation beast, you know, where you get dual NVMe, dual RAM. You'll notice, depending on the purpose of the laptop, my narrative will change, right? It all depends on if it's meeting the purpose of the laptop. For what it is inside, though, I mean, there's nothing else they could do. I would not sacrifice the battery size to add something else like, you know, ooh, it's got upgradable Wi-Fi or something. Like, who cares? Honestly, that's not the purpose of this laptop. This laptop is meant to be super portable, super premium, and have crazy battery. Okay, so here's a look at the laptop. I'm going to leave this light on here so you can see a little bit of reflectivity. Again, this is an OLED screen, touchscreen as well. You can see that there. But they do have some degree of anti-reflectivity. If this was if it was just a normal touchscreen, like some of Lenovo's other stuff and other brands, this thing would be a straight mirror. Like you'd be able to see everything I'm doing. So there is a bit of an anti-reflective coating on that, but it's not, I mean, that light right behind it is working. And then you turn that off, you don't have a light behind, and the reflectivity drops down to almost nothing. So very good. So this thing here is a really good screen. It's 1800p, which is good. 1600p is great, honestly. But once you get up to 15, 16 inches, it's fine. 1600p, 1800p just looks a little bit more crisp. So this is going to look very crisp. The text all looks very, very crisp at this size here. It's also 120 hertz refresh, which is nice. It's going to be fantastic. You can turn that down if you're really going for battery life. You can go down to 60. I don't often do that, but if you really need to stretch that battery, you can certainly do that. That'll be really nice. And it's relatively bright, not super bright. Oops. It's not super bright because it is an OLED screen. OLED screens typically don't get that bright. It's bright for an OLED. It's 500 nits. It's not bad, honestly. Now, it is also 100% DCI-P3. So you're going to be getting beautiful blacks out of that OLED screen, and then you're going to have beautiful, vivid colors, as you can see right here, where the greens become incredibly vibrant here. Let's go like that. Beautiful screen. And having that semi-anti-gloss. It's not a true anti-gloss, which can actually make the colors look ugly and matte. You're not getting that. It's just a super high-end screen, really. So typically you have a glossy OLED, which is beautiful colors, amazing, 10 out of 10 colors, but super glossy, almost problematic. Then you have anti-gloss OLED, which can be, it kind of mattifies the colors a little bit. Still nice, but you start to lose some of the color vibrancy. This is in the middle. This is often what you find on things like phones. You find them on things like high-end Samsung laptops and that. It's gorgeous. I have zero complaints about the screen. It's probably the nicest screen I've used on a laptop. I mean, there probably are other ones, but in the recent past, I haven't used a nicer screen. So it's outstanding. Now, Lenovo ThinkPads typically don't have the best audio. As a tradition, they're okay, up to like fine, sometimes bad, whatever. Typically it's, their high-end Yoga Pro, like Yoga 9i Pro, where you really get into the good audio. But I expect this one to be quite good. We'll see. Oh yeah, I can already tell. Really, really, really nice speakers there. Wow. There are some louder laptops, I would say. There's like a few laptops that I've tested that are a little bit louder, but wow, does that ever sound incredibly rich. Now, keyboard is interesting on this. ThinkPads are legendary for keyboard. This is a little bit different. It's more of a thin, low-profile ThinkPad. And there are lots of low-profile ThinkPads, and there's higher-profile ThinkPads coming like that. These ones here, you can see the actual physical keycaps are lower profile. They are contrast, so you get black. You will get some fingerprints on them. At least the chassis is a metallic, so you can give the keyboard a little bit of a wipe down, but you will get a little bit of fingerprints there. It's okay. Low profile, but lots of travel. Right? Not as much as some, big, thick, massive laptops. There's just nowhere for the keys to go in a chassis like this, but super snappy. Okay, let's get in here and do a quick typing example. There's a backlight. It may not show up well on camera, but there is a backlight there. Not like a crazy RGB. Just a little bit when you turn off the lights, you get a little bit of backlighting. It's quite nice. It's super nice, one typo. Super, super, super nice. There are nicer keyboards. I would say actually the Yoga 9i Pro from Lenovo is a better keyboard, but that's because it's a slightly larger keycap with a little bit more travel. But for such a low profile keyboard, it's fantastic. If you use like a MacBook and then you come to, if you use a MacBook and then you come to this, the MacBook is nullified as a keyboard. It's just, garbage compared to this. MacBook users, I think, would actually like this because it's kind of like a MacBook, has the same kind of vibe to it, but there's a ton more travel and it's more snappy. So it makes, a MacBook user would come to this and be like, I'm used to this, but it's way better. And then trackpad is beautiful, smooth trackpad. It's haptic. So you can't see, there's no plunge there. Some of the super high-end Lenovo stuff is haptic. I actually really like haptic trackpads. Yeah, I mean, keyboard and trackpad are awesome. No TrackPoint Nib, so there are ThinkPad enthusiasts who would be like, there sure isn't a ThinkPad anymore because it doesn't have the TrackPoint Nib. Maybe. I don't know. I don't have a take on that. I've been using ThinkPads since ThinkPads, and I have a closet full of old ThinkPads and semi-old ThinkPads, and I buy new ThinkPads all the time. I don't actually use the TrackPoint that much. I do sometimes, but really I don't use it that much anymore, primarily because TrackPad technology has got so much better. So the TrackPoint, I don't really use it that much. We've just moved it beyond it. It was good way back in the day on older laptops. I mean, it was like a godsend because trackpads either didn't exist or they sucked. And there are advantages to them. I mean, you can use the trackpad, type like this, come down, use the trackpad. You don't have to remove your hand from the thing, but I mean, you can also do that, right? Like, rather than using the trackpad up here and clicking left, right, it's kind of the same idea, so it's fine. But I do understand why, like, some enthusiasts would be like, it's not a ThinkPad anymore. Okay, now this is the part of the video where we test noise and thermal. So we'll come in here. Lunar Lake stuff doesn't actually do very good in synthetic benchmarks like Cinebench. It's not meant to. It's not a multi-core beast with, you know, crap loads of E-cores and that. And it doesn't have hyper-threading, so it doesn't actually do well here. But actually in real-world work, like video editing, it does quite well, to be honest. Actually very well. I've done lots of work on Lunar Lake stuff. But here we're going to test some noise and thermals and check the wattages. So, because this is a tiny little thing, I actually don't know what to expect here. Usually this chip would run at about 30 watts max. We'll see here. So we'll come in here. Usually the power mode is actually tied into Windows. So we're on best performance. And 36 watts peak. I don't know if it'll maintain that. That's very high for a Lunar Lake chip, to be honest. I feel like it will drop down. It's completely silent. And there it goes, the fan's kicked up. Remember, these are little tiny fans. So there's 2 heat pipes and 2 fans, but they're tiny little guys. Almost like you get in a little handheld or something. So we're actually not getting much throttling here, or at all. No throttling. There was a power exceed, but no throttling. And now the watts drop back down as expected, down to 27 or whatever, 25, so. These chips are very efficient. There's actually no need to really run them at above 25, 30 watts. It doesn't really do much. Yeah, it just doesn't benefit from it. So 43 on full power. The fans, you can definitely hear them. They're small, so the smaller the fan, the more kind of turbulence and noise they'll make. Actually, let's go like this. We'll go best power efficiency. We'll come in here, we'll go balance, see if it affects the wattage. 21. Yeah, it drops down in balance mode. Windows mode actually does tie in with ThinkPads. It does tie right into the chip performance. And you can see the wattage on balance drop down quite a bit, actually. I don't suspect it would affect performance that much. They don't do well here in synthetics. Yeah, 8,600. They just don't do well. Much quieter on balanced. Still dropping. There's a little bit of a sound to them, though. Almost like if you saw my review of the Asus G16, the gaming laptop, the hybrid laptop, it had like a little bit of a weird sound to the fans. They weren't loud or anything; you could just hear them because they were small, little like shark tooth kind of things. Let's come here. Yeah, it drops way down. 11 watts. Again, these chips are super efficient. So I mean, or 15. So a lot of the times you can actually do pretty serious stuff on these at like silent mode, whereas a lot of chips would start to choke. They'll be fine to just kind of use mulling about, but once you start to actually do something with the chip, when you're at 10, 15 watts, they often are not really capable of doing much with that. Lunar Lake is not like that. Whereas 10 watts, 15 watts, you actually maintain a lot of the actual performance. So a lot of the time, unless you're doing some serious workload on the laptop, I think you can actually leave it in silent. So when it's kind of just hanging out, you're on silent mode or balance mode, not doing anything, the laptop is, honestly, it's completely silent. Even if you do Cinebench on that silent mode, it is actually pretty quiet. Jump into some quick benchmarks here. Let's start with the battery, which is just absurdly good on this laptop. We can see here that we're at 100% brightness and 120 hertz refresh. No shenanigans with the brightness here. And we're burning around 4 watts, up to 5.5, but basically 4 at this time once the battery kind of hangs out. And that's going to give us about 20 hours of battery life on a Windows machine. Isn't that crazy? Of course, once you start moving around a little bit, it'll start to go down a little bit here and there, but these Lunar Lake chips are very efficient. So I did some 1080p 60 YouTube, just kind of messing around on YouTube and then let it play for a while. And you can see there was an increase in the amount of watts being used when doing something like YouTube video rendering. We're looking at about 6 watts here. So that's going to give us about 13, 14 hours battery life, something like that. So in the end, this laptop is going to have crazy good battery. If you want to extend it even further, of course, you could get that slightly lower resolution screen, which would actually increase the battery life even more. This laptop has incredibly good battery life. And then looking at the SSD, it is only a 2242, so it's going to be limited by size. However, the performance is very good here. It's upper speed Gen 4, so very, very, very fast. And then looking at the Wi-Fi here, that's as fast as my Wi-Fi goes, 400, 500 megabytes a second is about as fast as it goes. So overall, they're not putting cheap components in these laptops here. It's actually quite good, very good. I've been finding a lot of cameras recently have really desaturated my face and really blown up the exposure to the point where I thought I was turning into a vampire, which is possible. But this one is not so bad. My shirt is showing off like a burgundy-ish color, which is nice. My skin has a bit of a pink tone to it, as it normally should. So I don't look like I'm just like the slate wall behind me. The polling rate looks fantastic, and I have really horrible lighting, by the way. I have like no lighting on my face. Yeah, it actually is doing a really good job. So it's quite a nice webcam. You'd expect from a super high-end business machine where you're probably going to be using the webcam, and it's very expensive. So you'd expect such a thing. Now, these aren't gaming laptops, obviously. They don't even have dedicated graphics, but they have the Lunar Lake chip in here, which is very good. In fact, it's so good that it's in a dedicated gaming handheld, the MSI Claw 2 or whatever it's called. And it actually will outperform most of the handhelds out there. Handhelds that contain the Legion Go, the ROG Ally, ROG Ally X. This is a better iGPU. The 140V will outperform them. It kind of is at worst equivalent to them, and in most cases is slightly better. You can see here we are in Baldur's Gate. This screen is very high resolution, right? It is 1800p, not 1600p, not 1200p, not 1080p, not 800p like a Steam Deck. It is 1800p. It's an extremely high resolution. So there's a couple ways we could do this. You can go like that and then use a bunch of scaling, and you're going to need it because it's such a massively high resolution screen, which is fine. The higher the resolution screen going into these algorithms, the better they look. Performance on a 1080p screen might look bad, but performance on a 1800p screen certainly does not look bad. It's higher than, it's approaching 4K, put it that way. So, and you can see here, this is an iGPU killer. This is an iGPU killer. Baldur's Gate hits the CPU and the GPU very hard, and so it ends up just absolutely slamming it. And it's playable under these settings here. This is one of the hardest areas in the game. You can see when we come out here, the frame rate goes up quite a bit, and then it drops down a little bit here. And we're only on balanced mode. We can crank it up here. It'll get a little noisier, but again, you're gaming. You're probably used to a little bit more noise. So we'll go best performance here. It's not going to make a huge difference. You see we go from 25 watts up a little bit here. You might get a little bit more stability, but it's not going to make a big difference. All right, these chips are super efficient. So what you can do, what I would do on this screen, is go with a native integer scaling. It's actually an interesting resolution because you can go 900p, which is slightly above what a Steam Deck is, and a little bit below what like an ROG Ally or something is. You do not need performance at that rate. I mean, even balance might be too much. And yeah, like massive increase in performance. And it looks good, honestly, because it's native integer scaling. Right? You're not getting like a weird in-between type resolution. You're still going to get drops in that because it's Baldur's Gate. Right? And this is balanced. You can put that down. I probably would. Even that is probably overkill. Quality is probably more than enough. Right? Look at that performance there. And it looks good, especially on quality. I mean, you're above what a Steam Deck resolution is with only quality scaling. So it's going to look quite good. You can't really tell at all. There's no like jankies in the plants over here. There's no sparkles. Even the torches look good, right? There's no weirdness down there. Everything looks fantastic. And it's very acceptable performance. Again, this is a very hard to run area. You can see that when we move around, it starts to hit the CPU a little bit and it'll drop down. But this game is fine to be played at that. Like, I'm happy to play this game at 30, let alone 54. That's a very hard to run area. We come out here and we're going to be much more static, up to over 60 out here. You can probably turn the settings up a little bit even, honestly. Let's come down here. Some people, I don't know, I've had people ask me recently, like, why are you testing Baldur's Gate on an iGPU? Because it's an iGPU killer. You should specifically test Baldur's Gate on an iGPU because it hits the CPU and the GPU. It's kind of like Cyberpunk. It uses both. But Cyberpunk can be a little bit much for a iGPU. You can certainly do it, but and I'm also very comfortable with Baldur's Gate. Moral of the story here is you're going to be able to do a lot of AAA gaming on this device here. Again, whatever you can do on the MSI Claw, the MSI Claw that is the dedicated gaming handheld, you'll basically be able to do on this. Whatever you can do on a Legion Go, on ROG Ally, ROG Ally X, you'll be able to do at least as good on this, if not better. This is better to me. It's clear that this is performing better than those handhelds by a fair bit, actually. So yeah, there you go. Again, not a gaming dedicated device, but capable of doing a lot of gaming. I don't need to test other games. This game kind of summarizes it and shows you what you can do, and you can extrapolate from other chips and get an idea. Basically, AAA gaming, it's doable on here, and it will be just fine. You'll just need to play with the settings a little bit. Okay, that's the review. What do I think about it? It's a really nice laptop. So let's start with the negatives. One, it's expensive. That's a brand new SKU. It's a brand new ThinkPad SKU. Typically, they're a little bit more pricey. And it is, there's all kinds of really novel, interesting things to go with it. Beautiful screen as well, OLED screen, anti-reflective. I mean, yeah, it's just a really, really, really nice laptop. So the price is going to be quite high. Other negative, the fans are a little annoying. You don't need the fans to go that much because the Lunar Lake stuff is so efficient. It kind of just hangs out at like no watts, even when doing stuff like desktop tasks. It doesn't need any watts to do that, so it doesn't actually get noisy. But under full load, if you're doing a video export or something, there's a little bit of noise on those fans. It doesn't run hot by any means. It actually is managing to keep it cool, but there is a little bit of fan noise during that. Idle and other workflows, no, not at all. But just be aware of that. There's a little bit of that issue there. I think those are the only negatives, to be honest. It is extremely nice. The keyboard is fantastic. The haptic trackpad is fantastic. The speakers are fantastic. I mean, there's only the speaker grills coming out the side here. There's no like up-firing quad, 6 speakers or whatever. But for what it is, they sound very, very good. It's quite light, all-metal chassis, very portable, incredibly rigid. Like this thing feels super rigid despite being very, very, very thin. It's just a metal laptop, so it feels very, very rigid. The screen is incredible on this laptop. You're very, very, very nice because you're getting that OLED screen that's actually very anti-reflective, but despite being anti-reflective, it's not matte. A lot of times anti-reflective screens become matte and ugly, essentially. So, it's just a fantastic laptop. Personally for me, it's a little pricey for me to buy in date. Personally for me, this is something that I think a lot of people are I think this is going to appeal to a lot of people who are looking for extreme portability, very, 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 very portable, ultra premium design, actually even above the Yoga and the IdeaPad Pro Aura editions. This is more premium than that. The chassis itself, when you feel them, if you were to compare them side by side, the screen on this is a little bit nicer, and the actual chassis just feels more premium. And they're able to get a massive freaking battery in this thing, despite the fact that it's so thin. So it's super interesting. It's not going to be for everybody. It's not going to compete with some, gaming monster, some HX processor that just has crazy, crazy, crazy power. It's not meant to do that. It's meant to give you a very good balance of all the different things. Portability, premiumness, good screen, good audio, very, very thin, good battery life, yet still having good performance and not running super hot. So that's the laptop here, the ThinkPad X9 Gen 1. It's a first generation product. So they did a very good job for this first generation product. I expect there will be more of these because this is a very nice laptop. I mean, they're going to obviously do revisions on it, but I think even as it is right now, especially because they chose to put the Lunar Lake chip in here, I think it's actually a very good laptop. So there it is. Check it out if you're interested.